Live.
Welcome, everybody. This is the Ends Justify the Memes, the show where the lowest of the low, that is, the most wretched of the wretched and deplorable to end all deplorables, two heterosexual Christian males from the American South talk about culture, philosophy, history, health, fitness, and what it means to be a man in the 21st century. I'll be your host, Bill, and this is my producer and co-host, Tank. So crack open a beer. I already cracked this, guys. But lend us your ear, because the ends always justify the memes.
Hey.
So we had a false start there because the stream wasn't really working. I'm not sure it's working now either too well, but we'll just go with audio if that's the deal we got to go with.
Yeah, I don't know. Everything's looking good here, technical wise. I don't see what the issue would be, but
Okay, no, it's gone. It's working.
okay.
So, and it looks so far quite a bit better than it has in the past couple of weeks, probably because I got an Ethernet cable. So Tank, how we doing, man?
Well, now I started drinking my scotch a little faster because I was getting stressed out, so I guess I'm doing pretty good.
I couldn't get that little hiss because I already cracked this thing. I had to pretend like I was doing it again, you know?
That's when it's time to give up podcasting.
Yeah, right. Show number 5 or 6 or whatever in the world this is. So let's go to the memes. We're going to start a little segment, guys, in the beginning here, just covering some memes in the relevant news. Because you're going to have your first Jamaican Indian slaveholder president or vice president. Well, she's going to be the president if Joe Biden gets in. So we're going to do a meme review, kind of PewDiePie style, without the clapping. No clapping. You can drink, though. So you got Fauci pulled up?
I have to re-pull that one up. Give me 1 second, and I will have it.
When the hell do I pay you for, man?
Well, you probably should cut my salary, I guess.
Yeah, you owe me a cent then.
All right, it's up now.
Sweet. So we got Dr. Fauci. He's got a nice little finger there with some goop on it. It says, effectively tomorrow, you must all use lubricant and insert one finger in your rectum at all times in public to prevent the spread of COVID-19. And then, of course, we have people doing this. And I'm sure they would if he told them to. I'm waiting for goggles. How about Cop and Feel? You got Cop and Feel ready to go?
I do have Cop and Feel.
Only the Democrats could elect an unintelligible, senile, old white man when they despise old white men, and a cop in the middle of a former prosecutor who just wants power in the middle of a giant movement that's caused mass rioting against the police. Only they could do it.
I love this. Like the thin blue line American flag with Kamala Harris standing in front of it. It's like it's so perfect. I really want to know who they found to Photoshop her face on top of, because they matched the skin tone and everything perfect.
Oh yeah, and there's a ton of these going around. I think I have another one that's similar that I sent you. Let's move on to the next one. It should be Harris, I believe Biden's accuser. That whole thing that went away, disappeared.
Right.
Joe Biden's credible accuser. I honestly think that woman has embellished a little bit, but that's just me, based on previous statements that she said in the past, and based on tweets that she sent out, essentially saying, "Oh, just wait," and the fact that she never really did anything about it before.
Mm-hmm.
But I could be wrong. But then, once she gets picked as the VP, so Kamala Harris believes Joe Biden abused women, but still wants to be his vice president. And in the picture of Trump there is great, because of the press conference he gave the other day, where he was very cool, calm, and collected, and like We're almost seeing like a new Trump. He's finally got his mouth under control, and I kind of like his mouth a little bit sometimes, but a lot
Hmm.
of times it's like you can say less. You can say a little bit less, man.
Yeah, this it's one of those things like when Hillary's running, I was like the whole email scandal and everything, and I was thinking there's no way anyone who's voting for Hillary can take her serious. Like it's obviously she's lied her ass about all this. And I thought there's no way that the Democrats going to run someone so fake again. And here they are running Kamala Harris, who obviously just has no ideals of her own. She's just she's just here to make a paycheck.
Yeah, yeah. Well, we'll get there, but we all know how she got power in the first place. I mean, she was bonking a married man, and that's public knowledge. Who was the mayor of L.A. or did he become the governor? I don't even recall. I think he was. I don't remember his name off the top of my head. Maybe I should have prepared, but I don't really care. You guys have Google. You have the Duck Duck Goes. Um, but yeah, and she's basically dark skinned Hillary. I actually said something. I was commenting on a live chat on a stream last night, and I was like, "Yeah, she's basically the dark skin, like literally. She acts just like Hillary Clinton." Ugh. Oh yeah, get those burps out already. So
Yeah.
let's move on to old Pocahontas here. Now I can say that because I have some native blood in me, so I'm allowed. You know, I get that native privilege to crap on the whiter than white Snow White, who is often known as Pocahontas. And it says, "I can't believe Land O'Lakes took me off their banner." So obviously that's funny, but it's a little outdated. But the reason why I pulled that up is because the next one, Biden Black Female 2020, it is a Biden campaign sticker with just black female, because any black female will do, except for Stacey Abrams. That was a smart pick for him to stay away from that. Man, wouldn't that have been a nightmare? And then it says, "Does it matter which one, since the black community is not as diverse as the Latino community?" Because we all know all black people are exactly the same. And then, of course, the next one after that is Pocahontas again, after Biden announced. And this is an amazing Photoshop. He's choosing a black female running mate, and it's uh, um, Pocahontas's face put on Rachel Dolezal. So that's a really really good Photoshop.
Yeah. Oh shit, that is actually pretty frightening. I'll probably have nightmares about that one.
I think that some of these I was putting down, and I thought, man, like I was grabbing them. I didn't want to send you too many, but I was like grabbing them up, and I was like, I'm gonna have to use one of these as the cover of one of my some video I make on my other channels.
Jesus. Oh my god.
Probably the next one, actually, if you can get that one up. It says, "Imagine, if you will, Rod Sterling of the Twilight Zone." Let me do a Rod Sterling impression. "Imagine, if you will, a virus so intelligent that it knows the difference between a Walmart and a church."
Wow.
Yeah, I mean, you saw the Walmart, or the people, the church people having church in Walmart.
Oh yeah.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
Makes sense to me,
Uh,
since we don't have a constitution anymore.
well, processed carbs are a lot more important than going to church. So.
Hmm. Yeah, and that's the stuff I was, the videos I made. So I just finished up a little series of videos on All Minus One. That is official plug number one. I made a series about what we should be fearing, and of course, I think people were overly afraid of Donald Trump and this supposed pandemic that only kills really old people, or people with very poor health, or people who are obese or have heart disease. Um, there's all kinds of craziness out there, and I did some stuff on masks and actually the reality of the very little that masks do. They may reduce 50% of spread. They're not protecting you from anything. You have to have a very specific type of mask to protect spread from going out. But it's whatever. But that was a big point that I made. Is it's like, well, how come we didn't wear masks for months and everyone went to Walmart and other stores that were essential and everyone was fine? How come the people that were at home, as Dumbo Cuomo, not Fredo, the other one, the one that somehow is in charge of New York State, was like, I'm shocked and amazed that 66% of the people that died were people that stayed at home. They didn't go out regularly, were retirees and whatnot. It's like, okay, really? Because those are the people who were going to be most effective. And then of course, nursing home situation that they totally flummoxed. So, anyways. Moving on. Next meme. Meme review. Right? That's the thing.
Meme review.
Yes. Fighting the Establishment. Sponsored by... What do we got there? We got Chipotle. Chipotle is good eating.
We got Chipotle. We got McDonald's. We got H&M. All the friends are here. The gang's all here. Yeah, Puma.
Puma used to be cool.
This reminds me of a Twitter profile. What do you call it? Twitter account? I don't know what you call them. Called woke. It's I've been drinking scotch.
It's called. You don't start before the stream, right? Especially with scotch.
You know the thing.
The thing that they say, the thing.
No, this reminds me of a Twitter account called Woke Capital, and it's all about basically all these like huge, capitalist firms and whatever that the communists are supposed to be against, who just seem to ideologically line up with everything the communists are wanting, and it kind of makes you wonder who's really controlling who here, or who's really, against who.
Yeah, well, it's straight corporatism, and the video I made yesterday largely focused on Antifa. It just obviously just pointing out all the news headlines over the years that have come out with Antifa and stuff like that, but then also kind of like mocking them because they're idiots. And Antifa thinks they're fighting against capitalism, but we don't even have free markets in the United States. We have a largely free market, but what we really have is corporatism, and Antifa seems to not understand that there are people on the other side of the aisle that would actually work with them on some things and maybe make things better. But they're so delusional and so disgruntled and so immature and undeveloped as individuals that they just can't. They can't. So they got to burn it all down. Burn it all down.
Well, here's the thing, Bill. This is strange because, so the whole point, Antifa are obviously communist, and the whole point of communism, right, is to liberate the working class. Yet you see Antifa and other left-wing organizations teaming up with, these big capitalist corporations like Google and whatnot, to ultimately harm the working class. You got working people that are getting fired for saying the wrong thing or whatever. I guess we're going to talk about tech censorship later, so I guess this will go into it. But I find that pretty strange. And not only do I find it strange, but actual communists find it strange. And there's this one communist that was on Twitter by the name of Amy Therese, and she's like some Australian communist or whatever, but she's very much like, there under no circumstances should you be giving more power to the boss, the capitalist, over the worker. That goes against everything that communism stands for. And of course, she was called a crypto-fascist and a white nationalist, and she was banned off Twitter.
Well, it's like I explained to is anyone right of Mao, and really I got that saying from Don of Plebeian Media, who does a great news show every day, every morning, and has guests on occasion. He's a very small YouTuber, but Still does very great work. But he's right, and that's why I've adopted that saying. And I've always called communism slavery, and then Sargon started talking about saying he's going to start calling them slavers, and I'm like, damn right, you know. But they don't understand that the coin is socialism. In heads is communism, and tails is fascism. That's pretty much it. It's they're two sides, man, but they're still the same coin. So it, it's funny that they attack all these people with all that. Um, I should be doing a video here tomorrow or Friday. Probably not tomorrow. Tomorrow's my daughter's birthday, so her sweet 16 actually. Um, but probably Friday I'm going to do a video, maybe a little series again with political psychology, why people align the way they do and whatnot, and I guess like something along the lines of what people are geared toward when they vote or when they align with something. And a lot of it, of course, I get is that a lot of people just they don't understand. They're not interested. They're not deep thinkers. They're not intelligent. They haven't developed themselves. They heard some talking points. A lot of it, I think, is the me generation stuff. Um, the millennials, those horrible millennials. So I'm not a millennial either. Instead, I identify as a Gen Xer, and I can prove it. Anyways, let's go to the next one, man. Let's keep moving because the next one's along the same lines. It's Nike, just do it. Sponsored by Nike.
Oh man, yeah, the riot sponsor. Well, when the riots first started, I did see some people stealing some Nikes. And I guess the argument could be made that stealing a product is the ultimate form of consumerism.
Well, that, and they just wanted to go for a jog. So, you know.
Nike makes terrible running shoes.
I haven't worn Nike since high school. I don't like running shoes in general. The best running shoes I ever had was what I was issued at boot camp in the Marine Corps. They were New Balances.
Yeah.
So, next, let's go next. Meme review.
Meme review.
Says, hey Hillary, I think I lost the black vote. She's like, just tell them you keep hot sauce on you. Worked for me.
Did it though? Did it work for her?
Well, I mean, calling everyone deplorables also worked for her.
So, yeah, I guess that's true.
We just admit that we're white and heterosexual and Christians, and we live in the South, so we know we're deplorables.
But we also like hot sauce. So what was she really trying to do?
I love hot sauce. I love hot food. Probably to the point to my detriment. I actually had to cut back because I had some stomach issues a while back. But those things happen when you get older.
Right.
Yeah, I love me some. Dude, I love Popeyes. Popeyes is the best chicken. It's the best. And in my area, it's still called Long John Silver's, but the further south you get some Captain D's. I'm all about that too, man.
Right.
Anyways.
Man, I cannot, the older every year of my life, I can eat less and less fast food, and it just makes my guts explode.
Oh yeah, well, it makes me break out.
Oh really? The only two places I can really eat at now are Chick-fil-A and Zaxby's that don't absolutely make me like want to die.
I mean, like I'll do something good like Chipotle.
Oh yeah.
Or, Noodles and Company. I'll usually get like a salad or something there. Those kind of places. I will say I did have a burger the other week, but that's because I was out running around from McDonald's. But I was out running around and I needed something to eat because I was like, I guess my blood sugar was getting low or something. I was like, oh, I'll get a triple cheeseburger because I like triple cheeseburgers. They're pretty basic, really cheap. They're like $3, and I think they're like 800 calories. So I was like, hell yeah. No, don't have them. Limited menu. They can make a McDouble, but not a triple cheeseburger. It's like, what? So, but I got a double quarter pounder instead, so that works out.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But then I also got like zits the next day, which you shouldn't be getting when you're like
Ooh.
39 years old.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I have sensitive baby-like skin, you know. So next one is Biden-Harris 2020. Throwing Black Americans in jail since the 1980s.
Let me get. Hold on, I got behind here. Let me pull that one up, and here we are.
You need to have this ready to go.
Man, look.
That's 2 more cents you owe me. By the way, people, I don't pay Tank because we don't make any money. But if we did, I would pay him 50-50. And since he's not doing his job, I'm deducting from his pay right now. Or future potential pay.
Oh, wait, are you taking it out first now? So you're like keeping a tally of everything and just withhold my first paycheck?
I mean, I have a pretty good memory most of the time. I mean, I'm always underslept or whatever. But yeah, I'll know exactly what it is.
Yeah, I thought it was a really bold move that they decided to pick Kamala Harris in the time they're talking about defunding the police. But I'm like, but you're going to make one the president most likely.
Well, how about the Tupac comment? Like she's like, when she was on the Breakfast Club.
Oh yeah, when she was talking about smoking pot.
Because she's trying to play up to the black community, because obviously all black people smoke pot and they're all gangster ghetto thugs, right?
Right.
And they also, every single one of them, every single one, there is no differentiation. They all listen to hip hop. I mean, yeah, but so she said she listened to Tupac 2 years before Tupac ever released a record. She also apparently, because her I believe it's her dad's side, being Jamaican, she also talked about smoking pot several times and being like, well, yeah, I'm Jamaican, you know. And her dad's like a college professor, very educated man, and apparently was a little bit upset about
that. Yeah, well, she's just absolutely full of shit.
Yeah, she's as cringe as well, as all of them, as Pelosi, as Hillary Clinton, as Pocahontas. I mean, it's ridiculous. The stuff that they make up. I remember when Pocahontas said that she was fired for being pregnant, and that's not actually true. She quit her job, and the school tried to keep her, and she resigned, and I think they even offered her a pay raise. But she made this whole story up where I was a woman, and when I was pregnant, I was fired from my job. No, you weren't.
Bitch, so, don't lie to me. Bitch, do not lie to me.
That's yeah. And they talk about Trump's lies. We can say that the president embellishes.
Oh, for sure. Certain. Yeah.
For certain. I mean, we can say he says things off the cuff out of nowhere that might not be truthful. But he ain't going around talking about corn pop either.
Yeah.
We know.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, when it comes to politicians lying about stupid shit is whatever. Like, if Trump says he's got a 10-inch dick and he's only got a 4-inch dick, whatever. No one cares but, his wife. But when you're like lying like Hillary, like, oh no, I didn't have classified emails on my server, like that's real shit. Like that's a national security issue.
Yeah, my favorite with her was when we flew into Bosnia, we were under sniper fire and all this stuff, and it's like, what? There is video of you being met by a parade ceremony on the tarmac. And Biden did this with, he made this whole story up about pinning a silver star on a Navy commander. Completely false. Never happened. On the video I released yesterday, I played some clips. Jimmy Dore of the Jimmy Dore Show, which is one of the few left-wingers I actually like to watch, even though I cannot stand progressivism. And I've seen Jimmy Dore talk about crazy stuff. Like, he talked about some Uber or Lyft driver was going into labor, and she decided to pick up 2 other people or a person on her way to the hospital. And I'm like, well, that's on her. And he's like, I can't believe we live in a country where someone has to do this, just to go in. And it's like, she decided to do that. Do you realize that you're basically an independent contractor when you work for those companies? and that chick was like, "Yeah, hell yeah, I'm going into labor, but I'm going to make a little extra dough on the side right before it happens." I'm like, "Hell yeah, man!" But I don't come from that like weak wuss kind of mindset, so
Yeah.
um. Anyways, but Jimmy Dore covered this, I think back in March, a bunch of plagiarism and lies that uh, Biden did. In fact, I'll have to send that to you. You'll have to watch that
Mhm.
if you haven't seen it because it's kind of hilarious. And that was back when the news was actually um, rather fair because they recovered it on major news outlets. And now, of course, the news is just propaganda. But let's go to the next one and have the next few after that ready so we can keep going. So the next one is a uh, a callback to Hope and Change. Joe and the Hoe.
Joe. I almost kind of like Kamala Harris. The thing. Uh, I I kind of like Kamala Harris a little bit more, knowing that she's like just a slut. I think that's kind of funny.
I mean, I don't know that she is, but she definitely doesn't have. Look, I mean, um, I'll always admit to having a past of running around when I was single for some years, and of course I cut that out for various reasons, especially um, having some sort of like spiritual enlightenment. But aside from that, like I never messed with married people. Like I just didn't do that. And even people in the middle of a separation or a divorce, I really didn't. I might have talked to a few, but I never really got involved with them. And here she was, sleeping with the mayor of the city at the time who was married, and it's common knowledge and open. And we want to talk about, or at least we did in 2016. We want to talk about, Trump's infidelities and whatever else. And I don't know, he's a billionaire playboy. So what are you going to say? I mean, um, I don't really care about that stuff. I care about his policies. Problem with Kamala is her policies suck too. Or what policies? I mean, what are her policies? You know?
So, but here's the most important question of all this when it comes to Kamala Harris. Would you bang Kamala Harris?
No, but I'm married. I think Tulsi's pretty hot for her age.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Actually, Tulsi's got the kind of look that I actually like. Unfortunately, I married white bread, so we're going to continue the white race. um, Speaking of which, go ahead and bring up the next one. Oh, I can't believe I'm doing this. Sorry, Mom and Dad. Kamala Harris, a blow for equality.
Oh my God.
All right, all right, all right. Next one. Next one.
We're gonna jump off that one real quick before we have to pray about it too much.
Kamala Harris edition.
Go to jail. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. She's
I'll tell you what, as a prosecutor, I mean, I'm all for being. Don't get me wrong. I have a lot of problems with the system, especially having worked in it to some degree. But I'm all for being tough on crime that's legitimately harmful crime. But yeah, I mean, when the Democrats, the far left, is like get rid of all police, and your record is locking people up, especially for petty crimes like smoking pot, you know.
yeah. She's. I guess the basic theme of all this is you can't trust a word she says.
Oh no, but I mean I never did. It's like Corey, I'm Spartacus, potato head, serious eyes Booker. I mean, Cory Booker is yeah, when he was running, these people just like it's obvious. It's obvious that these people just want power. And if you haven't woken up to the game yet, you either like are really, really young and naive, or you just got to be stupid. You, I mean, I don't think you should be. I know what happens. Like, I don't think you should be uninvolved with politics. I know people get um they get sick and tired of it and think nothing will ever change, and that's one of the reasons why nothing does change. But yeah, we have way too much information now. It's way too easy to bring up a clip from last month or 2 years ago or 5 years ago. Oh yeah, excuse me. It's way too easy to do our research today, given that we have a free internet. Not totally free, because obviously big tech wants to lock that down. Speaking of which, did you hear about Laura Loomer?
Oh yeah, about what was the phone company shut her down or something?
Uh, no, Comcast, which is they do provide phone service, but primarily internet and cable. And yeah, and I'm not necessarily a fan. I think my wife like despises Laura Loomer, but but she's like a contending candidate for the Republican race in Florida and might win it. And they're basically shutting her down. And one of her opponents has stock in Comcast.
Hmm.
So like I don't understand why the FCC. I don't like the FCC. I don't think it's constitutionally, I don't think it's a constitutionally um, mandated organization, and you would have to argue pretty hard, maybe interstate commerce clause, but I really don't see where the feds have that kind of power. At the same time, if you're going to have them, shouldn't they do their damn job? Shouldn't they do something?
I mean, yeah, you would think, but we're in a world. I remember not that long ago, talking to people, the more liberal-minded people, and saying, it looks like a lot of these tech companies are, discriminating against conservatives, and they're like, oh, that's crazy. They're not doing that, and now it's so undeniable that like it's not. It's like the UFOs. Like, oh, there's no UFOs. Don't worry about it. And then they find out, oh yeah, the government's been researching UFOs for like 20 years.
Well, that's I brought up Seven Hills Antifa down in Richmond, Virginia, and their Facebook page, or sorry, their Twitter account. I remember I had some family in town. I was talking to my family. We weren't getting super political, and I try not to with family, but we were just talking about the riots and stuff going on. And some of my family lives out in Vegas, and I didn't think much was going on out there, but I was asking. And and my sister had said something about Antifa not being organized, and she didn't understand why Trump would do all this. Now she's a super like anti-Trump person, but practically everything she reads is propaganda, and I know that by having conversations with her. She's one of those people that is emotionally struck by the the presence of Donald Trump instead of actually looking at his policies. And in fact, she doesn't want global war. She doesn't want globalism. She doesn't think we should be the world police and all that stuff. But she doesn't, as far as I know, give Trump any of the credit for that. She's one of those people that was like, I know that Russia Gate's real, It's like,
Right? Yeah.
no, it obviously wasn't from the beginning. But again, I always say, not everyone's crazy like me and watches, 8, 10, 12 hours of news a day. Crazy. But anyways, she didn't think they were organized, and then my wife and I were both like, oh no, they absolutely are. And then my wife brought up one of her former employers, who I'm not going to mention, but is rather prominent within media, and like that was she was like, oh. Of course, I can get her to listen to to my wife. She won't listen to me, but that's all. That's how family goes, right?
Yeah.
So let's go to the next one. It says, hopefully Biden will nominate someone who will help fight against the police. And it says Democrats, and she's a cop. And of course, it's a South Park meme.
Yeah, like I said, it takes a certain level of like gigantic brass balls to nominate Kamala Harris in this climate.
Okay, but speaking of brass balls, Tank, you got to bring up Talcum X now. Okay. Okay. Speaking of brass balls, Talcum X said this was November 14th, 2018. I'll be frank and tell you two Democrats that I'm 99% sure I won't be supporting, primarily because of the dismissal history on criminal justice reform over the course of their entire careers. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. They both helped build and advance mass incarceration. Oh, yeah. So, August 11th, 2020. Mr. Talcum X. I mean, that dude's a walking meme, but that's it for me. I'm incredibly proud to see a brilliant black woman and an HBCU grad chosen as vice presidential nominee. I've done political work my whole life. It's rarely, it's rarely things dreams are made of. What? Kamala Harris, most progressive VP nominee in American history. Okay.
In American history.
Yeah, well, I'll name two: Woodrow Wilson and FDR. I'll give LBJ that as well, and Barack Obama I think fits in there nicely. But sure, she's the most progressive.
Yeah. He I don't even know where to begin with him. He's such a ridiculous person. I mean, just like what we're seeing right here. Like this guy, he has no values whatsoever. He's just like Kamala Harris. He's just chasing a paycheck. You know. Well, I mean, I guess I really can't hate the player. I must hate the game, as they say. So I don't really know how to take that. Maybe I should get on that gig.
You ain't black. You can't say that.
No, neither is Talcum X.
Well, he's voting for Joe Biden, so he gets his black card. So next one is a just random one I came across, but it's a Star Wars meme, and just for my love of Star Wars and the best Star Wars movie ever made, The Empire Strikes Back. And by the way, only the first trilogy is good. All the prequels and everything after that sucks. Don't get me wrong; some of the spin-off movies are good, but or I enjoy, I should say. But you know, and if you believe otherwise, you're just wrong. So, anyways, it says, this scene is so sad. Vader, literally a black man, makes a nice meal and sets out a nice spread for everyone. And Han Solo, typical white male oppressor, just starts blasting. Black Lives Matter.
Oh my God.
I mean, I'm going to do the Clayton Bigsby voice. Black Lives Matter. The white power. White power. Black Lives Matter.
Oh my God.
Really, he is the Clayton Bigsby of Black Lives Matter. Wow, it just blew my mind.
Well, I mean, you know, is he though? Because like I feel like Clayton Bigsby at least believed all the shit he was saying, you know. Like, you could fault Clayton Bigsby for a lot of things, but being insincere is not one of them.
Guys, we will eventually get to some serious topics. But we did, you know, when I started this, I did want to have fun with the stream, and I'm glad I suggested this just today. I suggested this, so. So forgive me. I had a mouthful of beer. I'm not trying to spit everywhere there. All right, let's go to the next one, Tank.
Okay.
And I got the black vote locked up. Yeah.
Oh my God, all these are great. I mean, they're terrible, but they're great. Oh.
All right, let's go. Next.
Meme review.
Yeah. Meme review. Come with me, and you'll see a world of mass incarceration.
I will rate that one higher than the rest. That's probably I give that a solid 8.
Solid 8. Yeah, that's a pretty good one.
It's good. It's a format you don't see very often. It's got some decent Photoshop.
I mean, you're lucky. I just happen to follow certain spicy things here and there, and and just happen to know where to find all the great memes. And I was bored earlier, so
Well, here we go.
I wasn't bored. I was actually working, but I kind of went in a rabbit hole for a minute. Took a break. So so next one is along the lines of the one a little bit before that, which is locking up that black vote again.
Woo!
And I can tell you that is a very accurate depiction of a correctional facility.
Yeah, that looks pretty good.
Facility.
Even complete with the bureaucrats that make way too much money sitting in the center of the place.
yeah. They walk around and then all the inmates kiss their butt while they yell at the COs all the time, treat them like crap. Next, we got old Kalamata Harris, like Kalamata Olive. Apparently, Tucker got yelled at by somebody by mispronouncing her name and how disrespectful he was.
How did he say it?
He says Kamala or something like that, and the guy was like, no, it's like a comma that you put in there. It's like or it's like Allah.
Oh, who gives a shit?
Exactly. And that was Tucker's point.
Jesus.
He's like, no, it has to begin with that. She's a former black slave owner.
Get her name right, motherfucker.
He didn't say that. But yeah, this is her locking up a little girl, which I don't know. She probably took some little kids away from their families, I have no doubt. That's what happens when you get incarcerated, by the way, people. Go into foster care when you don't have any parents left.
We know that
go ahead.
That whole thing with, Trump locking up children or whatever, and of course we know it started under Obama. And in a lot of ways, I feel like Kamala Harris kind of is the new Obama but instead of being gay, she's black or a woman. So, whatever.
I don't think Obama's gay. He's just married to a tranny.
What's the difference, though?
Well, I mean,
I probably shouldn't.
Anyways, moving on.
I probably shouldn't talk shit about Michelle Obama because I don't want to get my ass kicked.
Yeah, I mean, as long as we don't talk bad about Hillary, we should be good. So, you don't want to be suicided. I hate that word, by the way. I hate that.
Suicided?
Yes, suicided.
Ooh.
Then next is Old Forrest. And then one day, for no particular reason, BLM and Antifa didn't hate cops anymore.
I don't know. What do you? On a serious note, what do you think? Do you think that Antifa and BLM are going to be okay with this Kamala Harris pick, or like how do you foresee this going?
Yes and no. I right now the internet's rumbling. It's new. This came out, by the way, if anyone isn't aware, I don't remember the news source, but this came out last Monday or Sunday night, something like that, and then they retracted it. And I think it was a literal leak, and that was what was suspected, that they leaked it and that she would be the nominee. I think for Biden, it checks off certain boxes. One, she's dark skinned. She does have African heritage, being Jamaican, but she's also Indian. So it's interesting what side that she plays up. She always plays her black card, which is interesting. She never plays the Asian card. And I would suggest that that's because especially Indian Americans do really, really well. In fact, they're one of the highest income earners in the United States. it's like them, people from China, South Korea, Japan, and then and then Nigerians, interestingly. So there goes that whole race card thing. And then people of various European descents. And if you look at Asians specifically, once you start getting into different ethnic groups, different regions, like Southeast Asians don't do well. Like Filipinos don't necessarily do well in the U.S. Most of the Filipinos who didn't immigrate some years ago to the U.S., a lot of them are I hate to say, but they're women trying to escape the um, the poverty in the Philippines and marrying men here in the U.S. People from Thailand don't necessarily do some well. Taiwanese um, and and Kongers do well. But Hong Kong, of course, has a very free market, and Taiwan does as well, even though they have a very strict government. Um, Singapore, those kind of people that have the more advanced societies. The Vietnamese, I'm not really sure about. The Hmong from Cambodia, they've had a lot of issues. So that's what Gran Torino was kind of about. Um, so just it really like your general race, which I always say stupid. It's like way overbroad. I'm really on like the Thomas Sowell train with this stuff. Yeah, I've said Thomas Sowell and train like Soul Train at the same time. But the Thomas Sowell train, where he talks about race and culture, that kind of stuff is to me more important. It's a better metric because uh, your where your culture is, how the culture evolved over time, whether it's a culture of tribalism or individualism, whether it's a culture of hard work or not, that's far more important. And in fact, if we look at personality traits, the number one issue that um, says if you'll be successful or make money or not is your conscientiousness. And specifically within conscientiousness in the breakdown of the two, this is the big five, that is, of that major trait, the breakdown, the two lesser traits is your industriousness, meaning how hard you work, and how often, how willing you are to work. That's what really makes people successful. The second thing is your IQ. So a lot of people will dismiss IQ offhand, and then a lot of other people will say, well, IQ is the number one thing. But there are plenty of really, really, really smart people who never do anything with their life. They're not necessarily wise. They're not necessarily industrious. So, yeah. Anyways, that was a rant, but what was the original question?
Who knows? Who knows? Now, I guess, so what? We're going to talk about, actually, on this stream, we're planning on talking about tech censorship, right? That's kind of what we were wanting to do.
You wanted to talk about environmentalism. I was thinking about tech censorship, so we could get into both. We're
Let's
having a chat, drinking some beers over the internet.
Let's start with tech censorship, and we'll see if it goes any further.
Okay. Well, I want to do this one last meme.
Well, let's do the meme.
What?
Let's do the meme then.
All right. It's not really even a meme. It's literally a quote from Biden, and this is a transcript of exactly what he said. It says, "We cannot let this. We've never allowed, and any crisis from the Civil War straight through to the pandemic to the 17th, all the way around 16. We have never ever let our democracy sakes second fiddle way they." I can't even read all this. We can both have a democracy and elections at the same time.
I for one, I stand with Joe Biden in this, in that I too believe we can have democracy and elections at the same time.
Yeah, it's funny because I think having democracy has something to do with having elections. I thought so, at least. Are you Googling that? I can hear you typing.
No, I'm in the chat.
Oh, yes. Sorry, guys. I don't have this pulled up. I should probably actually pull up chat here. My bad. I normally take care of that, but hey, this is what I'm paying Tank Nothing for.
I just, you know, I'm just happy to be here, guys.
This keeps him from inundating his lady with his nonsense, much like my wife, who's like, "Would you just shut up? I don't want to hear it anymore."
Yeah, my fiance yesterday was like, if you quote Ted Kaczynski at me one more time, I swear to God.
Hey, Tank, before we get into like censorship and whatever else, I had made a point on all minus one. That's number 2.
Two,
Official.
baby. Two.
All minus one. Check me out on YouTube, please. I might start doing some live streams, but we'll see. You know. But that's my main channel. This is my live show for now with Tank, of course. And in any case, I had mentioned decrees and edicts by these mayors and governors that are not through the legislature, and how they're technically unconstitutional by the state's constitutions and by the federal constitution, and that is how monarchies are run.
Mm-hmm.
So are you still on board with this monarchy thing?
I guess I would reply to that with, you're about to have Kamala Harris as a president. Why are you not a monarchist?
Okay, I'll give you that. However, what if, stay with me here, what if it was like the Roman imperial system, and a Caesar could decree anyone to be the next Caesar, and therefore Kamala Harris would have already been after Barack Obama?
Then we would pretty much been in the same boat we're in now, right?
I guess, man. Oh yeah, I think that those Enlightenment views are very important. I think that was, as far as political philosophy goes, to some degree, the zenith of it. I think that there needed to be other things to come along, and since then, more than anything, what we've seen is the I would say the social sciences and biology has proven a lot of the theories right. Now, some of them are wrong. I'm probably gonna actually do a little thing on Descartes as well here very soon. But the point is that allowing men to be free, I think, is the most moral thing that we can do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't like oligarchies, monarchies. I think the history of the world shows us we just go round and round and round in this cycle, you know? So, I don't know, man. I do want to ask you that, though.
No, yeah, like, and like, we've talked about this in the past, but I'm kind of I really am. I'm a libertarian at heart, you know? But yeah. In my journey through autism / libertarianism, you know, we come across people like Hans Hermann Hoppe, of course, who's like, you're not gonna have a libertarian society, you know, in a democracy. So like, when you're talking about,
I was just looking at some of his stuff today.
Yeah. When you're talking about, you know, Enlightenment values, I think they're great. It's not that I have a problem with Enlightenment values. It's that, you know, we built these up, and I feel like democracy has eroded the Enlightenment values. And I think that we've been so concerned with, you know, enshrining these Enlightenment values in paper. Like, we have to have this Constitution. It's got to be this thing that, you know, we put all our eggs in this constitutional basket, and now it's, you know, virtually meaningless in a lot of senses.
Well, I don't agree with you, because I think it's not democracy that's eroded the system. I think it's, I mean, don't get me wrong, democracy erodes the systems. What I believe really has happened, though, is exactly what the founders understood, what people like Bastiat understood, that people would come in and pillage. So we didn't have enough rules in place to take people to basically give handouts. I believe it was Davy Crockett. I'm pretty sure it was Davy Crockett was on the House floor and gave a whole speech about Congress giving a donation to remember exactly, widow of a war vet, something like that. It's been so long since I've read it. It's probably been 10 years or more. But in any case, and he basically is arguing with the Congress and saying, no, you cannot, you can't do this. We have no authorization within the Constitution. But those people were principled. Those people were, those people were there to hold that libertarian idea up. And I think uh, anarcho-capitalism is completely utopian. At the same time, I think that that's the way to go. That's the direction we need to go toward, versus the reverse, which is anarcho-communism and complete totalitarianism. And and obviously, if you don't have government, then there's no totalitarianism. Problem is in order to get to that anarcho-communism, you have to have that whole period of totalitarianism first. So I don't think it's democracy that's doing that. And in fact, I would say democracy, direct democracy, is a form, or can be a form of, or turns into
Hmm.
socialism or communism. Like we look at the Greeks. The Greeks had joint meals. It was an important thing. Like, if you people aren't aware of this, just read Aristotle. Just read On Politics. You don't have to read all of his works. Just read On Politics, and you'll get a good sense of how Greek society worked and was organized. And it's really not that bad of a book to read. It's actually, I would say, it's much easier than Plato's Republic, because Plato writes in his dialectic, and that it makes it. I don't know. I don't find it the best way to create a story, or to create a philosophy, is to do it
Hmm.
through a story of people having a conversation. In any case, um, Aristotle talks about how the Greeks had, joint meals. He talks about different Greek city states and how they organized themselves. Aristotle believed that the downfall of the Spartans was the fact that they gave their women freedom. So, you know,
I mean,
um,
and he was probably right. So.
I mean, I believe in giving women freedom, but look, man, the female vote, females are, emotional, far more than men are, and it's easier to grab their
Mhm.
emotions than it is men. And we can see, I'm not about oppressing females. I think, in fact, if you want to look at oppression from females, that mostly comes from the left, really. If you look at all societies, so the Greek societies at the time that were highly homosexual had the largest amount of misogyny. We can look at the zombie people over, I think the Pacific. I don't know if they're Pacific Islanders or Oceania, wherever they're at. I can't recall. But the zombies basically pulled their little boys away from the time that they're about 5 or 6 from the women, because they think the women are evil and they corrode men and corrupt them. And then they make them fellatiate, not fellate, fellatiate young teenage boys, because they think that semen makes them grow strong as men. So they're gay. And with that, they train these boys, and they really twist and warp their mind. And the women are highly oppressed. So we saw this in Greek society, in a society that has less homosexuality, and we can compare that to the Spartans, which didn't necessarily participate in that. Although some people say they did, but uh, I think the argument's pretty solid that they didn't. Um, they 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 let their women have a lot of freedom. Their women were very athletic. They were taught to fight. They were strong. A lot of Greek societies actually lusted after the Spartan women because of their athleticism. It's like looking at a hot CrossFit girl or something. So, um, uh, but my point is to modern day, we look at the trans movement and we look at men who think that they're women and they're not, because they can't possibly be unless they can change their genetics. And that's what it comes down to. It comes down to genetics. And I understand there's intersex people and all that stuff. I'm not talking about them. That's a very small percentage of people that are born, and that's not what this trans movement's about. But if we look at those people, what do we see? Well, we see them oppressing women, not including them as women. What was her name? I haven't heard it from her in a while. Jessica Yanif, that crazy
Oh yeah,
man.
yeah.
Yeah, yeah. That's what we see. And so we see men wanting to be women to get the advantages of women. And of course, we have this whole topsy-turvy thing going on with obviously girls wanting to act because of feminism, wanting to act like men instead of embracing their femininity, which is, I mean, like some women are going to be geared more toward like a masculine side. And that's cool. That's cool with me. I don't care. But don't put it on women to be like, oh, neglect your feminine nature, you know, um, and say that very nature is oppressive to you, and men put that upon you. And I had this conversation with a girlfriend years back, who was this little dainty thing. I mean, she was really small, like 5'2", maybe 110 pounds, and just so absolutely super feminine, um, very soft spoken, and everything else. Um, and she went to an all girls feminist school, and before that she wasn't a feminist, and then they indoctrinated her. We used to get in arguments about it all the time. But she would tell me about how the fashion industry, this is a woman who liked to wear nice clothes, look pretty, and wear makeup, but how that she can't help herself, and she wouldn't let her daughters play with Barbie dolls because it it uh it puts horrible stereotypes in daughters her daughters' heads, and it's oppressive and blah blah blah. I'm like, no, it's not. They're just dolls. I'm like, so are He-Man? Is He-Man like oppressive to boys, like wanting to be buff and strong? And and she started. We were talking about the fashion industry, and she was telling me about all the feminist trope stuff. And I was like, you realize the fashion industry is run by gay men, right? And those same gay men want you to be literally a hanger. Like if you're a model, they don't want you to have curves. That's kind of changed a little bit. But if you're like in high fashion, like runway models, that kind of stuff, they generally want super skinny women. That's not what most men want. Most men want women that have hips and butts and boobs, and they have curves. And I like thinner girls to some degree. I like petite women, but I certainly have liked girls that are curvier for sure, or thicker. They're different kinds of beauty, and I don't mean in the way the SJWs bring it about, but and say that like, oh yeah, where they're saying like obese people are beautiful, but there are guys that like that too. So but my whole point was with her was it's gay men who make that image. It's not straight men. It really isn't. So, anyways.
No, yeah, you're right. So when we're talking about monarchy versus democracy, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like every monarchy on the planet that's ever existed has been some great utopia. And it is what it is. I feel like we all, if we're being realistic, we have to realize that they all have their trade-offs. My issue is now, a lot of people say, we need to live in a democracy so we can have freedoms, freedom of speech or whatever. And okay, so in a monarchy, we talked about the mold bug thing several streams ago. About you can't criticize the king under a monarchy or you might get your head cut off. Okay, that's true in some cases, but then again, the king's not around. Whereas in modern society, in this democracy we're in now, you could lose your entire livelihood if you criticize a New York Times journalist. So I think it's more of a debate on, if you like these Enlightenment ideals, which system is more likely to make them work in practice rather than on paper. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Um, repeat that last part again because I was kind of looking at this chat. Someone was asking when we started streaming on here, and I was just gonna let them know they can find us on YouTube later. But I didn't quite wasn't focused on that
Okay.
last thing.
If we agree that Enlightenment ideals, freedom of speech, freedom of all the stuff that our Constitution is founded on, if we say that okay, these things are good and they should exist in our society, I think the argument can be made that in practice, you're less likely to get things like freedom of speech in our modern democracy than you would in monarchies of the past.
Perhaps, but what I would say is, to me, it's always about power. So it's a matter of checks on power. And for instance, when the Caesars came in, when that whole thing started, Rome was a monarchy, okay? It became a republic, and then it returned to a monarchy. And the thing with that is that Caesar came in with his armies because the republic became absolutely corrupt. They kept the Senate in order to have something for the people. But in the end, even the emperors themselves were in some ways beholden to the people in a way that the whole cake and circuses idea, keep the people happy. But it didn't mean that they were good rulers or did good things or did well. So I think it's always about power. For me, I always want to disseminate power. I hate the idea of someone having too much power and authority. I've seen it so many times. Most benevolent leaders are people like me who are reluctant leaders, and I always have been. And I was a leader in the military. I had I never went and got promoted when I worked in corrections. I did test once, but didn't get the position because I wasn't able to switch shifts because I had full custody of my daughter and I hadn't been remarried at the time, and it just was not going to work out. Um, but like I have had authority over people. I mean, just in a simple situation, for somehow, some way, whatever, working in a jail for 2 years, I never had to deal with a flood for 2 years. Now, I've dealt with floods plenty of times after that, but for 2 years, I never had to deal with inmates flooding. And they do flood purposefully. Sometimes it's just because they're idiots and they throw their garbage down the toilet and it backs up, and you know, um, the piping system's not designed well and whatever else. But I'm watching this thing. I'm avoiding going in and being the one in charge of the cleanup, and I'm watching this thing go on, and the people in the unit who are the correctional deputies are having them clean it up, and it's like it's this haphazard, ridiculous thing. I came from the Marine Corps. It's like, no, you go do this, go do that, get this done. Let's do this organized. Let's do this a smart way. And I started doing that, and something that was taking somebody 2 or 3 hours to do and hardly gotten anywhere with it. I created a system really quick. It was my first time doing it, but it just made sense. It was something I stuck with pretty much the rest of my career, and got it done, cleaned up everything in about an hour or something like that. I don't quite remember because that was, like 15 years ago now. But um, my point being is that the guy in there, he didn't want to take charge. He didn't want to make a decision, and I saw that a lot. I saw that a lot. I saw that with leaders above me. I saw a lot of in the military. I saw really good leaders. In fact, one of my the leaders I was really close to was up to be the sergeant major of the Marine Corps a few years back, and he just recently retired. Um, and I went to Iraq with that guy. Um, what I've seen those. They're people that are greedy and want power and will take advantage, and they think, oh, now that I'm in a position of leadership, now I can take advantage because other people did it to me. And that's not the way to rule. That's not the way to live. George Washington, I always say, is a great example because George Washington was like this guy who was this reluctant leader. So, anyways.
No, I think it's an interesting debate, or not debate, but idea, because, and a lot of it, like, I'll fully admit that a lot of my, prejudices is
Prejudice?
the thing, the thing,
The thing.
prejudice? No, really? What?
I'm just messing with you because I know you've had too much Scott.
I'm pretty black pilled. I'm not a smart man, Jenny. So
Yeah.
so
I'm just a hick from Appalachia.
I'm just an old mountain boy. But I'm just at the point where I don't feel like I really trust democracy anymore.
You shouldn't trust ours, but we also don't have one. I mean, we have an oligarchy, and we started with a democratic republic. We started with a republic.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the reality is we have a corporate oligarchy, and that's what I was saying earlier about like the Antifa types. There are a lot of people who would say, like, I don't consider myself on the right, but I know that I am because I'm not a freaking communist. And that's essentially what makes me on the right, because I'm not a freaking communist. I consider myself a liberal, a classical liberal. And I talk to a lot of people on the right who are classical liberals. Like, we've gotten over the race issues. We've gotten over a lot of the stuff from the past. We just want to be free and have free markets and be able to go about our business and have sensible laws. But the people on the left that have these crazy ideas could join with us. This is another reason why I don't like parties either, because parties essentially make you tribal, us or them. I'd rather join with people on issues than a party ever. So it is whatever. And we might not ever get to the topics we said we were going to talk about. Who cares?
Yeah,
Who cares?
This is good. No, let me ask you another question and tell me what you think about this. If you could flip a switch right now that would make Donald Trump the president, I'm sorry, he is the president. If you could make Donald Trump the king of the United States, and you knew that doing so would mean that you would never have issues of the New York Times assaulting high school students, or you'd never have to deal with communists in the streets, or any of this stuff, would you do it?
Well, as that pure hypothetical, perhaps. But I can't say yes because I would have to stew on that for a bit, honestly, because I don't think I would want to, again, like so I would be very happy if his daughter became the successor, not because of her policies, but because she's hot, and I think it's about time we have a hot president. So,
All right, so here's an unpopular opinion.
But that's kind of my point, though. Is like, where would the successor go? That's always my thing. I think it's better to let the people pick. The problem, really, with our system is the system isn't working. The system isn't working because the people have allowed the system to go about its own way and do whatever it wants. The people have neglected. And it comes back to personal, individual responsibility. It's always going to be, dude, always. Like, we're going to be talking about like 7 years from now. We're going to be doing this show. We're going to have, like 200 subscribers by then. And when we have 200 subscribers 7 years from now, I'm always going to be talking about it comes back to personal responsibility. Because no matter what the government is, they can never do everything for you. And I don't want to be your daddy, and I don't want them to try and be my daddy. I said the other day on the all minus one people, all minus one, that's number 3. But I said the other day, you know, I don't want to be your daddy. I don't want to give you a handout. You know, I'm not trying to give you money, but I will teach you how to fish. And that's the way I look at things. Is I'm not trying to tell you what to do or how to live your life or whatever. But if you want, I'll give you some advice. I'll help you out. I'll teach you. But I'm not going to feed you though. I'm not, and I don't mean literally. Obviously, you come to my house or something. I'll feed you for sure. I like to cook, so I'll cook you up a giant meal. But Tank, I gotta pee, so we can be right back, or you can run your mouth.
No, yeah, I'm gonna be right back too. Be right back, guys.
All right, guys, see you. Tank, you there, man? Back. I don't have a camera on him, guys. I don't know if I'm coming over on the audio right now. He's usually, far more swift than this.
I'm back.
There he is. There he is. All right. Yeah, so as I was saying, well, let's get back to the Aristotle thing I was saying a little bit there earlier, is because I got on a whole tangent with that. Is he talked about they had communal meals. Another thing he talked about is they had an actual, believe it or not, people, the Greeks had a universal basic income. And he talked about how that they just wanted more and more year after year, and that the human heart, greed, has no bounds. I believe that's practically a direct quote. So that is an issue with democracy, but it's also an issue with monarchism, which is, I honestly think, the only real true system, though it's utopian because you have to rely on human beings, would be anarcho-capitalism. And look, here's the reality, dude. We live in a world. Let's get a little religious for a minute. So I know there are going to be different views of this if I state this, but this is the original first century metaphysical understanding of the universe from a Christian perspective. First, second, and third century into the fourth, and then things really got started to get twisted. We live in a world that, according to the Bible, was given over to Satan, the fallen one. He's not named by name. And once that world was given over to him, God basically, stepped back and was like, all right, I'm not going to mess with you, and gave those people out in the world over to certain gods, lesser gods, demigods, if you would. Not demons. That's a whole nother thing. That's the Nephilim, the breeding between the angels and the human beings. But they gave them over to what we would call angels in modern language. In Greek, angelos just means messenger, but of those spiritual heavenly beings, the Elohim, not the same Elohim, that's Hebrew, that is God. There are different ways to understand that within the text, but um, so initially, what happened was uh, there was the fall with Adam and Eve, right? And then they moved on, and then there was the 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 f- the angels came down, the fallen ones came down to earth and took wives from men, and they decided, this is in the book of Enoch, it's referenced in Jude, but it's actually hinted at in other places in the Bible. um, they decided that they were going to breed with them, and then there were these half breeds created. That's what we call demons. They're disembodied spirits because they weren't created by God, something like that. But this is essentially the ancient belief, the ancient metaphysics. There are a lot of modern pastors and ministers that struggle with this, and they're like, "Oh, I'm not sure about all." But all you have to do is read what the early church authors wrote. It's not that difficult. Um, so this happened. And then another really good resource, by the way, is Dr. Michael Heiser. I really like his stuff, although I don't agree with him theologically on everything. He he gets into this. He's got a good book called The Unseen Realms, I believe. But he does podcasts and lectures and stuff. But in any case, so the flood came. God was trying to have this relationship with Noah and his family, and then that kind of fell apart. So then there is the story of the Tower of Babel. Well, the Tower of Babel is about how the people decided they weren't going to have to deal with a flood again, and they themselves were going to be like God. And with that, they put themselves up high above them people and like gods. Now, if you want to get into the occult references of this, you have the idea of Nimrod, Nimrod being a mighty warrior or hunter against the Lord, against God himself. And Nimrod was supposedly one of the first kings ever. And there's a story with him and Semiramis and Tammuz and all these other things that are echoed throughout time with Horus and Set and Isis and other gods throughout history. The Greek mythology actually follows this closely as well. Um, but my point with this is that that after the Tower of Babel, supposedly God divided up humankind and separated their languages, and then all of mankind then um, was under the authority of specific angels. These angels were not of the good type. These angels were under the authority of Satan. Satan is the ruler of this earth. And so when Jesus was born and he started preaching, he talked about this theological idea. It's not really theological as far as the way we overcomplicate it today, but this basic idea of the two kingdoms. This is very explicit in the book of John when he starts talking about how the when he starts talking about the synagogue of Satan, and he starts talking about, I know who your father is and my father in heaven. He's talking about the two kingdoms. There is the kingdom of heaven, and that's what he preached. That is the actual gospel. Not that he died for your sins and all that stuff. No, he said the kingdom of heaven is at hand. The kingdom of God is at hand. Heaven is in Matthew. Matthew was very Jewish, written towards Jews, so he used the language heaven because Jews were very superstitious about even invoking the word God. they don't supposedly they used to have God's name. They wouldn't say it because they were afraid if you said it, you would die, or you know, lightning would come down and strike you or something crazy. In any case, um, so the um, the idea of Christ was not the modern idea that most Christians have, based on things like Calvinism and Augustinianism, which is Gnosticism, by the way. We'll go into that. I have lots of critiques about the different denominations of the church, um, but the the idea was that Jesus died for you, like Aslan in The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe by C.S. Lewis, as a sacrifice to Satan. Because remember, Satan offered Christ the entire world and everything in the world. He offered him that. If he was not the king of this world, why was he able to offer that to Christ? So Christ is the king of heaven and the coming world as far as Christian theology goes. And I mean, like, again, first, second, third century before it got twisted. So when you look at things, you understand that from that perspective. If you are at all a person of faith, you understand that the entire world and all of humanity is always going to be corrupt, and that there's really no system that we're supposed to have. And so one of the things that I always reflect on is how were the Israelites originally set up? Well, they had no king. They only had judges. That is an anarcho-capitalist system. The reason why we have the republic and the liberty that we have, or the Constitution that we have, is because the founders, regardless of their various Christian beliefs, based most of our laws and most of our society within Christian beliefs. That doesn't mean that the United States was a Christian nation per se. It was never necessarily declared that, but Christianity was the majority of the beliefs of the founders, and even those that were considered deists of the day, that's not the same word that it means today to them. So all of the Enlightenment figures, more or less, that I'm aware of, were of the same belief, and most of them believed, if you read Montesquieu, if you read someone like Bastiat, I'm trying to think of other people off the top of my head, but those are just two very prominent ones to my mind. They talk about the need for religion and God. I think the biggest problem that we might have as a society is our loss of belief in God or religion. So much so to the point that even I brought this up before on here. Richard freaking Dawkins has talked about, now finally acknowledged, the need for spirituality. And when you don't have that, you get something what Nietzsche predicted, that something would have to come along to take it over. And that thing to take it over was the state. And we saw this. The communists do this. So one of the first big, communism's always existed, by the way. But one of the first big iterations of communism were the Jacobins during the French Revolution. And they were all atheists. And liberty was the god that they worshipped. But liberty, for them, was being libertine, not true liberty, because true liberty requires discipline. And they ate their own, much like the left does now today. They end up guillotining the people that started the guillotines. I think something like 500,000 people died during the French Revolution. I might be wrong about those numbers, but off the top of my head, I think it's something like that. It's a lot of people, And then France, of course, suffered through Napoleon after that, and some other stuff, and they still suffer through ideas of socialism. And so I guess my whole grander point to all this is that the reality is there. Well, let's put it this way: there's the old saying, the greatest trick the devil ever pulled was convincing the world he doesn't exist. And what the commies do is they want to replace the state for religion. And that's really what everyone on the left actually does. And if you go to church with somebody who is on the left, and I don't mean like an old school blue dog, Democrat, classical liberal type maybe that sympathizes with some old school democratic ideas. I don't really know how, because I guess they just don't understand the history of the Democrats. But like, if you know someone like that, I guarantee you, the state is more important to their lives than God actually is in the end. And I've talked to a lot of people like this in churches, and the state is, they know far less about scripture and the history of the church than they do about anything with the state. And here's another thing, a really interesting thing, last point, is that God created us to be an individual with individual relationship with God. Now we have that through Christ, but that relationship through Christ is individual. It's not collective. God never created us to have a collective relationship with him. And that is why we have so many different denominations of the church. That's why within the Christian church, there's so many different factions. It was never meant to be collectivized, not like the Catholic Church was. So, anyways, man, that was a lot, but what do you guys say? What do you guys say?
I mean,
by the way, I want to go a little bit over tonight since we started kind of late with that false start and all that.
Yeah, that's fine. No, I think you're onto something for sure about the because the last, I don't know, 100 years, maybe a little bit more, has been the only time in human history where we haven't had religion that's been, at the forefront of everything we do. I think that's starting to show its consequences. I think that industrial society and technology has exacerbated that problem in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. Just a real quick add-on to that, Tank. I'm going to let you talk, but my brother-in-law and I talked some weeks back. I think maybe Memorial Day or something like that. But we talked about this a little bit, about how back in the day, the people that were very rich, right, in the beginning of, let's say, the late 1800s, beginning of the 1900s, someone like the Rockefellers or, whoever else, the robber barons, if you would, they gave all kinds of money to charities. And now there's almost no expectation of that. And it's all about letting the government do that for you and not having any personal responsibility, to the point now where even obviously those same people are in bed with the government, controlling the government, if you would. But anyways,
but yeah, so
continue.
So we've definitely lost our spirituality. I think for the most part, most of the world is, regardless of whatever political affiliation they have, the whole world's getting less religious, and it's showing a problem. We have to. I feel like humans have to have some meaning in their life, or we become nihilistic. That's something I've struggled with in the past, is trying to figure out like what's the purpose of any of this? Why do I do anything? And in the past we had God, and we had various religious communities, and I think we were talking about this maybe last week or the week before. Like, a lot of the problems that we have were solved by religions. Like, we didn't have inceldom or incels or whatever. Wasn't an issue until recently because we had the monastery. Like, if we didn't view procreation and sex as our entire being, giving up all that to go serve God in a monastery was in many ways considered a better path of life. To say that to someone now is just like absolutely ridiculous. This idea that you're going to give up sex and earthly desires to go like dedicate your every waking moment to serving God is ridiculous. It's too much. We can't do that. We have to have how are you going to keep up with TikTok and all this other shit. I sound totally boomer when I say that, but
Well, I mean, not so much, man. I mean, you're not wrong. I mean, look at the pornography addiction.
yeah, exactly, yeah.
Well, but what I would say too, though, is on top of that, it's not just about meaning, as we have too much leisure.
Yeah.
It's not a biblical saying, but there is a truth behind it. Is that the idle hands makes for the devil's playground,
Hmm.
and I know exactly what that is, and we're pleasure seeking, man. I mean, it was hard to be pleasure seeking in the past. People, they may not understand this, but people were a lot uglier in the past too. And the reason why is because they were a lot more often, they had illnesses where they were growing up and young, so there were more deformities.
Hmm.
They were malnourished often. So we got way, way, way too many pretty people around anymore. And a lot of them are fake pretty. But and that makes it hard, dude. And and then you get a guy like me who's just always naturally been like girl crazy. Now I've calmed down since I've gotten a little bit older, but I'm just saying, where it's almost like you can't keep your own eyes in your head. And then I read biblical scriptures and they talk about like men who are lusters after women and stuff, and I'm like, man, I'm like, I get the sentiment. And I've even been there at some points where I've been like, yeah, I'm not gonna stare, I'm not gonna gawk, or I'm not gonna whatever. But then at the same time, if I drive down the street in like town or something, and it's summertime, and I see girls wearing almost nothing, and I'm like, how can I not stare? I'm like, you know, I'm a dude. I'm driven toward that. There's a biological incentive for me to go after that, and I think really the only way that you override those basic biological incentives is through your spiritual connection with God, and developing your own soul. And yeah, it's a very interesting world that we live in now. And we can also get into the idea of materialism. Yeah. Oh yeah. That was one of the interesting things that Descartes kind of got into a little bit, but we talked about this to some degree. But the materialism's so easy, like things come to us so fast. It's just so hedonistic the way we live. And I'm not trying to throw shade on anybody. Like I'm guilty of it too, man. I'm guilty of it
Oh
too.
yeah, yeah. Like even even as much as I like to talk about Ted Kaczynski and industrial society, like this laptop, all this like gadgetry, all this stuff's fucking cool. Like it's cool to look at. It's cool to shop for. Like I play guitar and stuff, and all these different pedals and this and that, and I got multiple sets of Dungeons and Dragon dice because I want to buy all these like it's ridiculous like how easy it is to just fall into this trap of I need to keep consuming the stuff. I need to keep consuming the stuff, and it makes me feel better. Therapy shop and all kinds of other shit, and that's a shitty place to be. For our society, it's because then if you can't do that, if you can't spend all your time consuming meaningless crap, then you start feeling like you're being oppressed because you don't have the same advantages of other people who get to consume meaningless crap, and it comes this like self-hitting cycle of not only is it something you want to do, but because you can't do it, you're resentful over it, and that is
right, or you become some sort of drug addict,
right. Yeah, yeah.
Or you replace it with some sort of
Mm-hmm.
thrill. I mean, I think hobbies are productive, especially if they're creative. I think, going out and like, maybe you're really into guns. And so you want to get some gun training, and you start getting obsessive about it. But in the end, when you do that, is it because it's fun? Like, we do things based on emotion, mostly. And it's really hard to be logically based. So my dad's a minister, and um, although I've had my own issues and struggles with my faith over the years, and even didn't even believe for a period of time. Um, but one of the things that we talk about often nowadays, and that I remember him preaching about when I was a teen, was is how we make most of our decisions, or every decision, on emotions. And so he would use the example of a car. When you go to buy a car, why do you buy the car? So let me ask you, you're always throwing me hypotheticals. Like, when you go buy a car, why are you buying that? What are you looking for within a car that you want?
So I've only ever purchased one car that, like, I went and bought, like, I make a payment. Like every other car, either like it just happened to buy off someone who was selling for cheap, because I've never had a car I made payments on until recently.
Okay. But even
Yeah.
that, why'd you buy those cars?
So I bought. Those I bought just because I had $1,500, and that's how much they were selling them for. And,
Okay, so was that a rational reason though, or was that?
I mean,
Do you think that was rational or emotional?
I would.
Did that
I would have rather had a different car for sure, But I bought what I could afford at the time, so I guess it was rational.
Okay, but could you have bought a car that was cheaper?
Maybe. Yeah, I probably could. Yeah, if I probably could have. Look, just to like completely throw myself under the bus here. I probably could have bought a car maybe that needed a little bit more work that was cheaper, and I could have saved more money instead of blowing it on whatever the fuck I was blowing it on at the time. Yeah, for sure, absolutely.
So that's what I'm saying
Yeah.
is like we can always like post hoc, we can always rationalize to ourselves why we did something.
Right.
But the reality is, in the beginning, that car was available. Someone said it, and instead of you going, well, okay, well, I have $1,500. Maybe I could get something a little cheaper and save a few $100s. Or wait until something is a little bit more toward my liking, or whatever. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
There's always some sort of emotional component and satisfaction in what we're doing, whether it is alone. Oh, I got this great deal in a car, and it became available. I mean, I had so my former employer, we had this nurse there that she was actually really good, which is unusual for being in a jail, or at least our jail. And we all really liked her, but she had bought a WRX limited, and so it wasn't an STI, but the limiteds are still really nice, and I'm a fan. And she was looking to get rid of it, and I considered buying it from her briefly. And we were talking about it, and she was talking about the payments, and I was like, I don't know if I want to add any more debt to the debt that I had, you know? And so you could say that was a rational decision on my part, um, but there was an emotional pull to buy that car, to even consider it.
Hmm.
There's nothing rational about that. But in the end, was my decision purely rational, or was it emotional? No, I think there's a balance to both,
Right.
right? I think this is how we come to Christ. Honestly, I think there's too much in at least in America with the charismatic church and stuff, that is purely emotional. I'm not against the charismatics, although they do some crazy things. Um, but then there's the other side of it that is just purely rational, and these people never have an emotional relationship with God. It's almost like having. It's like if you had a purely rational relationship with your fiance, and and I'll say this, like, I very much chose my wife based on rational reasons, but there had to be an emotional appeal there. I was also a much changed person. Before that, though, almost every relationship I was ever in was always based on emotional reasons. There was no rationale whatsoever, and and that was just stupid. And it really was. It led to horrible things. So, um, but imagine just picking a girl because they check certain boxes. Well, she's pretty enough for me. She has a job. She's um, I don't know. She's a certain age that I want. She has the same political beliefs. She has similar spiritual beliefs. That's just pure rational. But what if you have no emotional chemistry? So I don't think that we can see relate like I'm using a relationship because I think that we do those things. We do rationalize relationships, but we also know there has to be an emotional component. But how often do we do that? Do we think about that and apply it to the rest of life?
No, yeah, I think you're right. You know, you're when you're talking about the the, the car buying really hits home to me because now I've got a car payment I wish I didn't have. But
Right. Well, no, I mean, my wife and I recently bought a car,
mhm.
and I kind of wish she would have bought a cheaper car. I'm glad that she bought the car that she did because it was reliable and we needed
Yeah,
it. And then my car kind of went out on me, and I bought my car a few years back to give to my daughter when she turned 16, which I'm not going to be able to do now,
but
just because of our financial situation at
yeah,
the moment.
yeah, but you're right. Like you know, when I went to buy this car, and you know, I like my car, but you know, when I went to go buy it, it checked the boxes, but it also I could have got a cheaper car. You know, I could have got a different model or whatever. I could have got it cheaper, and I didn't because I guess I fell sucker to the marketing. I mean, that's what it is, right? It's marketing's there to say, hey, you need this because it's going to, give out a symbol about your life or make you whatever. Um, and I think in modern society that's and really this marketing and how we're such a slave to it is a product of the modern world in that before we couldn't produce enough to have multiple versions of the same thing. You know, you had a shovel. There was no, you can go to Ace Hardware right now and find 500 shovels, whereas in the past you were lucky to have one.
But look, man, there were still rich men in the past. So, for instance, Jesus traveled and ministered for 3 years. And during his ministry, he had not a singular place to stay. In fact, he spoke about that. He said, the Son of Man travels around. He has no home or den like a fox or something like that. I'm paraphrasing. I don't remember exactly. Um, the first time he sent the disciples out to go. He did it as, he mentored them a little bit. And then he said, go out, go preach the message. This is how you're going to do it. He said, bring nothing with you but the clothes on your back. Take a staff and that's it. Um, and that was a very early church Christian principle. So there were many people in the early church who became teachers. They became bishops, if you would, and they essentially took vows of poverty. It wasn't until Caesar came in, until Augustine, that or sorry, not Augustine, Constantine, that the church got involved with the state because the state was always involved with religion before that. And Constantine believed that the Christian church needed its own buildings and needed to give the laity the needed to give them a salary and whatever else. Before that, they all took vows of poverty. There was Clement of Alexandria, who was a philosopher in the 3rd century, and he had some wealth, and he came to the philosophical viewpoint that Christ was the way, that God was the true God of the universe, and that this was the way of life, and this was the ultimate truth. And he immediately sold every single book he had and gave it up to the poor, the money, that is, gave it up to the poor so that he could then go live what was considered this Christian life. One of the things that happened with me some years ago when I had this great spiritual transformation was I realized I have so much crap in my house that I don't even use, and I keep buying stuff. And why do I do this? Now, granted, my biggest expenditure is books. I spend a lot of money on books because I like books. I like to read, but you know, knowledge is power, that kind of thing. Whatever. And I'm just infinitely curious. It's just my personality. But I had all kinds of stuff, and I started getting rid of it. Had all kinds of clothes. I didn't even know what in the hell I got rid of. I just all kinds of ridiculous stuff, and I still think I have too much stuff. And it is very easy to fall in that trap. Now, I was in a depressed spiritual state for years, for like 6, 7 years. You know, I went through a very traumatic thing in my life that was years long. You know, 7, 8 years long. That just totally had my head spun around and screwed up. You know, and I'm not making any excuses for myself, but my only point is that 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 held me there. The rest of society is, I think, held where it's at largely because they just don't care or they don't know. In culture, the cultural blanket, the zeitgeist that is cast upon everyone has turned everything upside down on its head, especially with things like postmodernism. And you know, I don't know, man. It's one of those things where it makes me sad because I see, even with someone like I would say, like a friend like Matt Christensen, who they're starting their call-in show right now. But Matt, and I'm not saying I'm like besties with Matt or anything, but I know Matt, and like I see where he's coming along on this journey slowly towards Christianity, and that he never even thought about or considered before. He was never raised in it. He had no concept of it. He always thought I think it was the other week he talked about because of C.S. Lewis, he always thought about morality between person and person, but he never considered morality toward his own self. And I can tell you, both my wife and I have experienced this. The most horrible things that you can potentially do is to your own self. The things that you will hate the most about what evils you have done in your life will always come back to what you have done to yourself. And it's not because you don't love your brother or sister or whatever, you can't help a neighbor. It's that those things might bother you, that maybe you said something wrong or did something wrong to someone else, but what you do to yourself literally destroys your own soul. It chips away a piece at it. And every time you violate your own self, every time you decide not to stay true to your own personal morality within yourself, you slowly slice a little piece off, and again, and again, and again. And I'm someone who went actually through this for some years, and thank God, you know, that I, from whatever reason, because he had hope in me, I guess, that he never left me, regardless of me leaving him. You know, gave me the resolve to come back, and it opened my eyes to things that I was never exposed to before. So,
Well, this stream got super serious. So.
I know. It is 10 after 11, though. I don't know quite when we started. I know we started late because of the whatever. So I don't know, man. If you want to talk about that or say whatever, or we can start wrapping up, dude.
Yeah, that's probably good. I think that's going to lead into something I'd like to talk about maybe in the future. You know,
when you've had less scotch.
Yeah, I actually toned it down a little bit tonight, but you know, this materialism topic is really important to me, and it's something I feel like has specifically had a huge problem. You know, it's been like a cancer on Southern culture specifically, that we can get.
No doubt. Yeah, Southern culture having kept a more traditional society for a long time.
So that's something we can get to in the future. But I think we've probably got as much as we can get out tonight.
Yeah, man. I mean, I'm certainly myself. I'm ready to grab something to eat, and I'm glad though that we talked about what we were gonna talk about, and then didn't even touch on it. Like we still just had a good conversation,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
So, all right, man. Well, with that, everybody, thank you for watching. We do this every Wednesday night at 7 p.m. Eastern. I am Bill. This is Tank. And you can find us later on. We do re-upload to YouTube. We might start live streaming on there again. Our first stream was yanked. So, because YouTube are, you know, horrible with free speech. But in any case, thank you for joining us. And this has been The Ends Justify the Memes. And remember, those ends always justify those memes. Play that outro, Tank.